All right, good enough. I'm going to go ahead and just get started. Um, Hope everybody's doing good today. We're going to talk about wellness through physical activity. It's chapter 13. That's what we'll talk about today. Oh, and before we get too far into it, I'll say that I accept Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal for that easy ass test that I just gave you guys. I can send that out my information later, and y'all can all send me a token of your appreciation. It was easy. It should be kind of easy if you are here and you're paying attention and doing the things that most of you are doing. So I appreciate you doing your part in it. And like I say, my goal with this class is to give you a good overview of what recreation therapy is. I'm not trying to overburden you with the class. I want you to actually think a little bit. That's why I give the open-ended questions that you really can't miss. Kelly and some of the others that are in the class can tell you it gets a little more difficult as you go farther along, but that's the way it should. You know, a 200 level is supposed to be easy, and a 400 is supposed to be a little more to it. I still have the same basic style as we go through, but still just an idea of kind of my goal and why the test was so easy, because I'm not trying to kill you guys with this class. I want you to actually take some things from it and gauge whether or not therapeutic recreation is something that you might want to think about doing, you know, whether it be a number one plan or a backup plan if you say you don't get in PT or OT school, as some of you are applying to. So that's just a little background on that. So let me jump in and we'll talk about wellness through physical activity. It's kind of a long chapter, so I probably won't even do the whole thing today. We'll spread it into both days this week, probably, is kind of my plan. So I'm going to share my screen. And we'll jump into it. Okay, somebody thumbs up if you've got the PowerPoint. All right, thank you. So as it says here, wellness through physical activity. I know that it's almost so simple of a word, but there are, you know, wellness coordinators and wellness centers now. So somebody give me a simple explanation of what you think wellness is. A good way to put it.
Someone's like stability of good mental health.
Yeah, good mental, and it's all encompassing. Good mental health, physical health, emotional health. Wellness covers the entire gamut is what we're talking about. It's being aware of, making choices toward living a healthy and fulfilling life is basically what we're looking at with this. It's not just being free from illness per se. You know, that's a big part of wellness, is not being sick, but it's kind of a dynamic process of change and growth into making someone's overall health, well-being, mental state as good as possible. That's kind of what wellness is all about. And it's like I say, it's an all-encompassing term. That's a simple word, but it covers a whole lot. The learning outcomes, these are just good things to kind of look at prior to the tests and all, but we'll talk about the importance of physical activity. We all know that inactivity affects everyone. You know, if you're inactive, if you're not getting exercise, you're not doing things, then you're going to have negative effects. And it doesn't just affect you and I, it affects people with disabilities probably disproportionately because, you know, especially a lot of these disabilities that we've talked about have situations where they're unable to get out and go on their own, or they have a hard time walking or doing things independently. So obviously they're going to be more sedentary than we would be. So we know that inactivity is going to affect the populations that we've talked about so far in the class. So we actually have a health promotion degree, I think, here now, and therapeutic recreation helps with health promotion in general. That's kind of, health promotion and wellness are very similar to me. Physical activity is important in therapeutic recreation. Obviously, it's not the end all be all for therapeutic recreation. Obviously, a lot of our activities are mental, may be strictly for fun. There may not be a lot of physical activity, but we can use physical activity as a positive as well. We'll talk about some components and exercise programs. We all know how important accessibility is. Does anybody remember what the law is that kind of governs over accessibility of facilities? Three letters.
ADA.
There you go. Thank you. ADA. That's the main legislation that has to do with accessibility. So there's they do these reports, and this PowerPoint is a little dated, obviously, but there's a report called Healthy People, and there's a 2010, a 2020 report. And as it says here, it's just a challenge for people to ensure a healthy life. It promotes healthy living. It promotes disease prevention. And what it realizes is that people, and the way that we put this into what we're talking about in this class, we need to realize that people with disabilities have increased health concerns, and therefore they're going to have a higher risk of secondary conditions. You know, they have medical, social, community, and family issues that some of us wouldn't have. You can look up this report at that healthypeople.gov. It's kind of interesting, the stuff that's there. The goals of a therapeutic recreation specialist that are tied in with this Healthy People report and how we are part of wellness for our patients is that we're there to motivate, educate, and empower. And that is, those are very, very important things for us to be able to do. I've said this before, and I know it to be true because I've lived it. Motivation, being able to motivate is huge. And I'm not saying that you have to totally change someone's mindset to where they are just jumping with joy every time it's time for therapeutic recreation activity. But if you can get somebody that's comfortably sitting alone to come join in, that's motivation. You know, just come on, come with us today. You can just sit back, you know, whatever you have to do to get them to participate. Once they see that they're going to have a good time with you, then you'll have a lot better response rate, and people will be coming back easier. So you got to motivate them to get started. I've seen that a lot, especially in substance abuse facilities where they are there for rehab. A lot of times when they come into the facility, they're not feeling great. You know, they're there because they're trying to detox and find replacement behaviors and things, and you're a big part of that. And if you just allow them to sit and be miserable, then you're not really helping them. So we got to be able to motivate people to come and be part of the culture we're trying to create. Education is another big thing that we do in recreation therapy. Whether it is when someone is leaving your care, giving them the tools that they have to be able, that they can use to do recreation and leisure when they get out of your care. Whether it's what's available to them, you're letting them know, or whether it's teaching them how to do recreational activities that they haven't done before, giving them some new things to do, or helping them to learn which recreation and leisure things are going to be activities that will actually help them to improve their life if they use these. So education is big. And then this empowerment is plays into what we've talked about, how a lot of the people that we work with in recreation therapy have disabilities of some sort, even if it is just the elderly who can't get up and get around like they used to, if it's diabetes where they're having to check their blood sugar a lot and they didn't used to have to do this. So they're going to be in a worse frame of mind because of these limitations that they're dealing with. So we give them challenges that we feel like they are going to be able to be successful with. You want to challenge them enough, yet give them an opportunity to be successful, and that will in turn be empowering to them. You'll make them feel better about themselves, they'll have more confidence, and they'll feel like they can take more control regarding their life and their health and their overall wellness going forward. On as far as clientele, there's nearly 60 million people in the US that have been diagnosed with disabilities. Pretty large number when you think about it. It's a lot, but there's obviously a wide range of disability that's tied in there. Not every person with a disability is severely affected. But regardless of who we're working with who has these disabilities, we need to, through this education that we talked about, we need to show them the importance of wellness in their life, for everybody. So it's our task to educate them on what recreation and leisure can do for them, and to influence their choices in a positive manner. Best example I have of this, again, is, thinking of rehabilitation centers. They're there because they have made poor choices and they have a lot of time to think while they're there. Obviously, they're going through sessions with psychologists and things. A lot of times they're talking about their choices and why they are where they are. So through our time with them, we try to influence them and their choices to help them make better choices, find replacement behaviors that aren't inappropriate moving forward. That's kind of what we're looking for. Here it talks about the coexistence of illness and wellness. Just because somebody has a disability, it doesn't mean that they are holistically ill. It doesn't mean that they're sick because they have a disability. Some of the happiest people I know have disabilities. And they're not really in that bad of health, a lot of these people. So just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you're ill or that your wellness is not good. But what we can do is promote the thought and the fact to them that wellness is critical to all areas of life. So we're talking about how, mental, physical, emotional, all of the things that we can touch with recreation therapy play into this overall sense of wellness. And all of those things play into how successful and how meaningful a life that you have. So they need to realize that that's buying into the theory of wellness is something that's going to help them moving forward. So settings for wellness and physical activity, everywhere, as it says here, there's rehabilitation to home-based services where we're talking about all the way inpatient therapies, for people who do have injuries and things like that, long-term care facilities, short-term home-based services. There's tons of different wellness-based settings. So we want to make sure that physical activity is part of each domain of their functioning, that they see the importance of physical activity in conjunction with their mental state of mind, with the capacity to improve their mood through physical activity. Not only are you, improving your cardiovascular health, which is going to make you more healthy, but you're going to feel better mentally at the end of it also. They need to realize how it all ties together. And we'll talk about more about the physical activity and the domains of functioning coming up. So another thing that we need for people to understand, and as a recreation therapist that we would know and use, is know that fitness is a lot more than gyms and exercise equipment. It can be very simple things that help with fitness, especially when you're talking about someone who is very sedentary, who hasn't been doing much at all. Walking is exercise. Pushing a wheelchair is exercise. Simple stretching is exercise. So it doesn't have to be huge things. A lot of facilities, something that they've gone to is horticulture. They plant gardens, either with food or just like flower gardens and things like that. And they let the clients come out, the patients come out and work and help tend to these things. And when you're not doing anything previously, if you're going out and working in a garden, that's exercise. You may not be getting your heart rate way up, but if you're squatting down and standing up and things like that, then you are getting some exercise through doing gardening. Absolutely. So that being said, as recreation therapists, we need to just understand the basics of physical activity and how we can implement that into our patients' programs. So physical activity, just the definition. Physical activity includes all forms of bodily movement produced by the contractions of skeletal muscles that substantially increase energy expenditure. That is a big, fancy, wordy definition for something that is very simple. Basically, it's any time you move your body by contracting your muscles to do anything that burns calories. That's physical activity. So you can be sweeping a floor, physical activity, vacuuming, physical activity. So if my wife is ever looking for physical activity, I just thought of some things that I could share that might be able to help. So again, on this defining physical fitness a little bit further, we go from physical activity to physical fitness. So your physical fitness is your ability to perform your daily activities, it says here, with vigor, and to be at low risk of premature development of hypokinetic diseases or conditions associated with sedentary behavior. So if you sit on your butt and you don't do anything, then you're at a higher risk for secondary complications, diseases. We all know that your risk for diabetes is going to go up. Your risk for cancer even will rise. Your risk for high blood pressure goes up. All of these things are tied in with sedentary behavior. That's just factual, and we know that, and we know that that has to do with us and people that are in these special populations that we've talked about. And when it's saying with, you know, a good way to think of physical fitness is think about going up, say you have to go up 20 stairs. You know, for most of us, it's not going to be hard. We're not going to be winded at the top of the stairs. But for someone who's been sedentary, and they start using, you know, have to go upstairs, you know, the first time they do it, they're going to be worn out. The second time they'll be worn out. But as they do it more and more and more, then it will become easier. And as it becomes easier, then that is a good sign that their physical fitness is improving. You know, when your daily activities are easy to do without totally wearing you out and wearing you down, then that's when you are achieving a certain degree of physical fitness. So let's talk about the importance of physical fitness. There's recommended levels of activity, and it needs to be tied into the capacity of the person. You know, what can they do? What are they capable of doing? What are their needs? Now we're talking about in a recreation therapy programming type setting here. What are they capable of? What do they need? You know, where are their weaknesses? And you see this in the assessment phase that we talked about in the chapter where we went through the therapeutic recreation process. That's where you find out what their needs are. And that's where you also find out what their interests are, you know, what they like to do as far as recreation and leisure and things like that. Now, the things that they may name as being their, you may need to, through education and motivation, work on even trying to help them find some new interests. When I was at the park commission here in town working with older adults, there was a program that had basically just started when I got there, and I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this, and some of you may not be. Pickleball had kind of just started up. Do you guys know what pickleball is all about? It's kind of a combination between tennis and ping pong, almost, in a way, to me. It's played on a smaller court. You use paddles and kind of like wiffle balls basically to play. And with it being a little slower ball because of it being the wiffle ball type, now it can still hum pretty good. And you're using paddles instead of heavy rackets and things like that. The smaller court allows people that are older to play this in a very competitive manner. So this is just an example of where someone would come in that may be an elderly patient, may have never heard of pickleball. You may need to expose them to this, and that may end up being their favorite thing. And you talk about good exercise, good socialization. You're working on keeping score, keeping up with the rules. There's a whole lot of positives that come out of playing a simple game. My point is that they're going to get activity through doing this. They may have never heard of it before. So as a recreation therapist, you can teach them new things and expose them to new things that they may really enjoy. And now pickleball, there's like this whole pickleball community in the 50 and older category here in town. They've put pickleball lines on some of the tennis courts at Avent Park, I think, where they can play outdoors. They play at the activity center as well, and they play a lot. Most days of the week they play, even on the weekends. So by doing that, they're able to get this next part. They're going to get in their 30 minutes of moderate exercise on most or all days. So that's a good goal to have as human beings, period. Your benefits, what you see out of it, what you get out of it is equivalent to what you put into it. So they're proportional to the amount of activity you do. If you do 10 minutes of moderate exercise a day, you'll see maybe a little benefit. If you do an hour of moderate exercise on a day, you're going to see more benefit. Obviously, that's common sense, and we all know that. So the thing to do, especially with the special populations we're talking about, is focus on the amount of activity that they're getting and the things that they're doing, not necessarily the intensity. You know, we're not trying to work them to a collapse. You know, that's not our goal. We want to get people that are inactive up and moving. And just by doing that, we're going to see increases in their health benefits. Obviously, we're going to see some increases there. As far as disability and inactivity, how that plays in, like I said, a lot of the people that we've talked about have this increased risk of developing these secondary health conditions because they are inherently inactive for the most part. So they're going to have a lot of times medical problems that are tied into their condition. A lot of times social issues are tied in as well to the conditions that they may have. Emotional, maybe whether it is them being depressed because of their condition, whether they don't have that many friends, things like that. They may be not as close with their family as they could be, especially if they are in a long-term care facility or something like that. And they may not be getting the chance to be out in the community as much as they want to be. That is some things that also tie in to their disability and inactivity that play a role. So because of the fact that many of the people we've talked about are more inactive than the general population, physical activity is very important for us to provide as recreation therapists to them, whether it is something as simple as going for a little walk outside. You know, for somebody who's inside all day, they can get some fresh air, they can, you know, look at the birds, whatever you choose to highlight during your walk. They can socialize with the people that you're walking with, things like that. It's important to just get them up, out, and moving. So by doing that, like I say, just a simple walk with a group, you're going to get some emotional benefits out of it because you're part of a group, for one, and you're able to socialize with your peers, and you're also going to get physical benefits. And that's something in that one sentence there is something that I really, really like about recreation therapy. And it is what sets recreation therapy apart from occupational therapy and physical therapy, where they deal with primarily and almost totally physical ailments, injuries, things like that. They're trying to rehabilitate that, where we as recreation therapists, we're able to all at one time with what we're doing, because they're enjoying what we're offering to them, because we found out what they like to do. We work on emotional side, we work on the social side, we work on physical side, all in one activity a lot of times. And I really, really like that we can hit those things as well, rather than just like a physical issue. So that's part of what made me really buy into recreation therapy and what it's all about is that we can hit so many things by doing one activity. So how do we use physical activity in therapeutic recreation? We are going to, when we're working with people with disabilities, personal autonomy is listed here, and that's, we want to, our inherent role as human beings, we all have this protector thing. Most of us have this protector thing that's tied into us. And we find ourselves, when we're dealing with someone who has disabilities, wanting to be, most of the time, overprotective with our patients or the people that we're dealing with. What we have to remember is we want to allow them to make decisions about what they want to do, about what they don't want to do. They need to have this personal autonomy, which is they need to feel like they're in control of their life. And in a lot of these situations, when they need a lot of help from others, they're not going to feel like they have this autonomy. So we need to be sure that we aren't part of the problem, that we are part of fixing that. And part of what we can do to help with this is by focusing, personal autonomy, just to go back, it ties right into one of the main things we've talked about in class, and that's that least restrictive environment. It's very similar in the fact that we don't want to do too much. We don't want to make the choices for them. We want to give them the option to do what they want to do. Another thing, we want to focus on the client, not on the client's assistant, family member, whoever may be with them. We want to talk to the client. A lot of the people that we work with have folks that accompany them. Now, we don't want to give those people all the attention because our client patient is going to feel that. I see you, Kim. We have somebody who always has snacks during class. I told her she needed to share today, so we're good. Sorry, now I'm hungry and I can't think about what I was talking about now. Main thing is talk to the clients, not to the people that are with them. Don't talk to them like a child. We want to be overprotective and we want, oh, are you okay? That's very demeaning to a lot of people. Do not do that. Talk to the client. If they can't answer for themselves, talk to the client and then look for the person that's with them to help with the conversation, but you still need to keep your focus on who you're dealing with. So a lot of times the people that we're going to be working with have mobility disabilities. They're unable to, a lot of times, they have problems with, say, balance. We talked about different situations where people have spasticity, which is the really, really tight muscles, or contractures. The muscles are so contracted that they can't straighten their arms or legs. So obviously that's going to cause mobility disabilities. We've also got, we may be working with people who have Parkinson's disease. At a certain point in that disease, you start having trouble with your gait. So they're having trouble with walking as well as we can. So we have to choose the proper type of physical activity for these clients according to their ability level. What can they do and what can they do safely? That's the key. So in someone who has trouble walking or who has trouble with, let's say someone who has trouble with balance, they're already prone to fall. So we don't want to do activities where they're going to be making sudden changes of direction. We don't want to put them on uneven surfaces. You know, like say we wanted to go for a hike. We wouldn't want to do a hike that had tons of uneven terrain. We would want to do a walk on a path that was graded and smooth where they're not going to fall. You know, it's going to be based on, now you may have some groups, especially just say in a drug and alcohol rehabilitation facility. Most of these people, they may not be feeling their best, but you're not talking about people that have a lot of physical impairments per se. So they may get more out of a tougher hike, you know, that they're actually able to complete and feel good about themselves at the end. So depending on who you're working with, you can tweak what you're doing. So just base it on the ability level of your clients. So when we're talking about mobility disabilities, you'll learn more and more about that as you're working with patients and clients, but it's not making the diagnosis is not really what we do. We work with them and try to help them get better or keep them where they are. How we do that is we have partnerships with other providers, whether it's nursing, doctors, physical therapists, occupational therapists, other people that's their thing. We find out what level is appropriate by working in that interdisciplinary team we talked about, where we all work together for the benefit of the clients. So we also, now this is one that I've worked with a lot when I was at the NMRC. Back there again, I talk about that place a lot, I know. I dealt with people who have cognitive impairments, and what we have to do in working with them, we use things like repetition. We may have to repeat things more often than we would normally have to for them to understand instructions, things like that. We may have them repeat back to us what we're saying to make sure that they're getting what we're talking about. Modeling, that's just exactly what it sounds like. We're showing them how to do things properly. We have them imitate what we're doing. When someone is, okay, especially when we are doing physical activities, just say it is exercise and we're doing resistance exercise. If you are, okay, let's say you guys are working with a personal trainer and you're at the gym and you are doing an exercise for the first time and you do it a little bit wrong. Do you want your trainer to yell at you in front of the whole gym? Probably not. Some of you might be kind of weird like that, but I'm not. So when we correct people, we need to correct them in a positive way, in a way that's not going to be embarrassing. But it's important that we correct form and things like that because we don't want them to get hurt by the activities that we're asking them to do. So remember, another thing to remember when you're working with people that have cognitive impairments is that we have to give them extra time and have patience with them, because not only does it take them longer to do activities sometimes, a lot of times it's because it takes them longer to correlate everything that you've said, you know, where I can tell you something and you get it. It takes them a little longer to understand what's going on sometimes. So you have to be patient. And on one of our previous tests, I had a question on there asking you guys one of those gimme questions again, where I said, you know, what do you think is one of the most important traits to have as a recreation therapist? And I got patience a lot for that answer. So this is one time when you're working with people that have cognitive impairments, that you really have to have that patience and realize that the person may not be doing what you're asking them to do. It may not be because they're defiant. It may be because they don't truly understand what you're asking of them. So, try to be patient with them and try to be understanding that they may not get what you're doing. Something that's super important on here is age appropriate. When we are working with clients in recreation therapy, we have groups that come in periodically that do yearly surveys. Their accreditation bodies, they look to make sure that we're doing things the way that we should do them. Now, there are situations where people who have cognitive impairments they may be 35 in chronological years, and they may be 9 in mental years. If you get what they're at like a 9-year-old level mentally. These people that come in to make sure that things are being provided appropriate for the clients, they look to see that we're doing activities that are age appropriate, that we're not letting a 45-year-old man sit in the yard by himself and play with GI Joes. I don't know. That's just the first thing that came to mind. But keeping things age appropriate as we can is something that we need, that we owe to them, that we need to try to do as a good recreation therapist. You want to try to make it as age appropriate as possible. Now, there's sometimes in some cases where there were people at the NMRC that had kind of their security thing was, this was probably a 30-year-old woman, and her security thing was to have her baby. And she carried around a baby doll all the time with her. And that was a constant struggle of trying to, get her to participate in our recreation activities because she didn't want to put her baby down. So did we have to have patience then? Absolutely. Because you really want her to participate in what you're doing. She's like, no, I'm not putting down my baby. And you want to say, it's not a real baby. You're 35, put it down, but that's not what we do. That's not how we need to react when we're working with them. Let's see. Let's do 1 or 2 more slides and then we'll call it for the day. Another group that we work with are people with visual disabilities. Now, I'm not talking about just people that are blind. There's different levels of visual disabilities. Especially think about working with clients that are developmentally delayed, have cognitive issues and visual disabilities. If you're asking them to do specific activities, they may not be able to because they can't see. Just like I said, they may not be doing what you're asking because they didn't comprehend what you're saying. They may not be doing what you're asking because they really can't see how to do it. And they may not be able to verbalize to you, hey, I just can't see. That's the problem. When you know that somebody has visual disabilities, figure out the best way and find out how the client wants to be oriented to their environment. That would be in a case of extreme vision loss, where they would need to be able to find their way around almost. You want to give them specific, detailed verbal instructions because obviously they need the verbal instructions since they can't see. You can't use modeling for someone who can't see you doing it, obviously. Make sure to use the client's name when you're working with them to get his or her attention. And this one is very important. Don't approach the client or leave the client without indicating the action. Has anybody ever walked up to a dog that was sleeping and like patted it on the butt? Did you get bit? It can happen. That's the equivalent of what if you approach a client that can't see, you're going to scare them. We don't want to do that. So we want to use their name. The same thing, we don't want to just walk off and leave and them looking for us, feeling like they're all alone. We're putting them in a terrible situation by doing that. So don't approach or leave without letting them know what you're doing. For clients who have hearing loss or deafness, we want to make sure that we find out how they prefer to communicate. It may be sign language. A lot of recreation therapists learn sign language because they work with people on a regular basis that may have hearing loss. If it may be a situation where I've worked with people before where we communicated through writing down what we were talking about. We both had a tablet and we would write back and forth and show it to each other, and it worked out fine. Obviously, I think that tells you whether or not I knew sign language at that point. The answer would be no. Again, address the client, not their interpreter or aide. If they have someone who's with them to do sign language because you don't know how to do it when you're talking, you talk to the client and then you let them look at their interpreter to see what you're saying. And if the client tries to speak, a lot of times when they have hearing loss or deafness, their conversational ability, their speaking ability is going to be unclear for you to hear. It affects the way people talk. And you also need to make sure that the client is following what you're saying. Ask them if they need you to repeat what you were telling them or what you're trying to get across to them. For clients that have speech disabilities, again, have patience, allow extra time for them to talk. I think in one of the videos we watched, well, I know for sure there was a girl that said, basically, listen to us, give us time. And she talked really slow on that video. I remember her specifically talking very slowly on that video. And we have to give people extra time. It may be just that they have a stutter. Just because someone has a speech disability where they have trouble talking to you doesn't necessarily mean that they have a cognitive impairment. So do not embarrass yourself and put your foot all the way down your throat by inferring that they have a cognitive impairment to go along with a speech impediment, because that's something that would just be an assumption, and a very awkward one if you made that assumption and it wasn't the case. All right, last one for today. So the basics when we're talking about exercise and people with disabilities. As far as assessment, you want to team up with an exercise specialist, exercise physiologist, somebody who does this to assess what their fitness level is. Now, in some cases, if you're just going to do walking on a flat surface, you're not trying to get someone ready for Mr. Olympia. I mean, you may not need a big in-depth assessment. Depends on your facility and what your goals are and what the client's goals are. Obviously, we know the stages of exercise. Remember these. You've obviously got a warm-up, stretching, activity that you do, and then a cool down afterwards. A lot of times you stretch at the end as well. Stretching is probably my least favorite thing to do in the world. It hurts a lot to me. Some people love it. I hate it. That's probably why I've torn my hamstrings about 10 times in my life, because even when I was stretching to play football and all, I was only halfway doing it because it hurt. So I guess I should have learned my lesson on that. Another just basic, when we're talking about people with disabilities and working with them in an environment of exercise, we want to make sure that they're wearing proper clothing. We would have at NMRC, again, we had Special Olympics a lot, and we would put out a memo saying, we're going to be leaving for Special Olympic basketball on Monday at 9:00 a.m. Please have the clients from your cottage at the circle to be picked up at 8:45. Okay. We sent that out from the recreation therapy department because we were the group that was taking them to Special Olympic basketball. Now, what do you think happened? Anybody have an idea? What showed up at the circle? We had clients show up in blue jeans, cowboy boots, very inappropriate clothing for the activity that we were planning to do. Not their fault. We learned from that we had to spell out exactly what they needed to wear. Please have the clients dressed in shorts, t-shirts, tennis shoes, and a light jacket if necessary. Something like that was the next memo that I put out and sent to the cottages. From then forward, we started getting them dressed in the right thing. But the clients, you're giving them as much option as you can, but in certain situations, you have to make sure that they have on the proper attire for what you're going to be doing. Make sure that they're properly hydrated. People who have disabilities, we talked about different ones. A lot of times they're not going to focus on making sure that they're drinking enough, and they don't want to miss anything. So they don't want to go out to the water fountain, because they feel like they're going to miss something. So make sure that you keep them hydrated, and make sure that if they're sick, they don't participate, because a lot of them want to participate so bad that they would do it sick. So it's very relatable to these days. Obviously, we talk about how contagious coronavirus and all this stuff is. You wouldn't want people that are coughing and snotty nose playing 3-on-3 basketball, in close quarters with one another. So you have to kind of police some of these things when we're talking about planned exercise for people with disabilities. Something else that we need to know, and this is how we work with the other groups of individuals that help us to serve the patients. We need to know their medical history. They'll have documents from when they come in upon intake that we can look at that tells us their medical history. We as recreation therapists, that's not our place. We don't take their whole medical history. That would be a physician, that would be nursing, someone like that. We can refer to their paperwork, which needs to be correct and kept up to date, to see what their medical history is, to see what precautions need to be taken with them. It's going to be in their IPP. It's going to be in their paperwork. We'll talk about it at those interdisciplinary team meetings we talked about. We need to know even things as far as what some of the clients you may work with may be on medication that makes them extremely sensitive to the sun. That's not all that uncommon. So if someone's extremely sensitive to the sun and you're going to be doing an outdoor activity, obviously you need to plan accordingly. They need to have plenty of sunscreen. They need to be extra hydrated. or you need to find something for them to do that's not out in the sun. Probably would be even the best opportunity for them to not be put in that situation. But it is our job to know that they're on a medication that may cause that. We also need to know if a client is on a medication that is going to make them sleepy, drowsy, maybe incoherent, because then we wouldn't want to be doing some sort of activity that is going to be dealing with balance or have a need where they need a high level of function, because they're going to fail if they're on something that's making them groggy and loopy. So that's just something that we need to keep up with, and that we can find through team meetings, working with the other departments, and through going over the medical history of our patients. I told you guys this is a relatively long chapter. We're going to stop here for today, and we'll pick back up here on the next class. So I appreciate you guys being here. Anybody have any questions? Anything? I'll send out that information. I'll send my PayPal info, my Cash App, and all that in the thing later, and y'all can all send me a donation. Y'all have a good day. I'll see you guys on Thursday, okay? Later, guys.